We're jumping straight into a really unexpected turn of events today.
Yeah, the recent courtroom testimony from Kanye West, it's really something.
During the Sean Diddy Combs trial, no less.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just a quick comment.
Not at all. He took the stand and, well, he made some incredibly direct, pretty unsettling allegations.
Exactly. The trial's focus is meant to be on these other serious charges against Combs, right? But West suddenly pivoted. Hard.
Towards Michael Jackson, of all people. He started making claims about Combs maybe being involved somehow in how Jackson died.
It was like completely off script from what everyone expected. Like the courtroom was ready for testimony about the main charges.
Yeah, not a deep dive into Michael Jackson's death.
And that's why we need to unpack this.
Yeah.
We're going to get into what West actually claimed, the details he reportedly gave in court.
And what this could all mean. It's important, though, to remember where this is coming from.
Absolutely. We're basing this purely on the reports of that courtroom testimony and the reactions that followed immediately after.
Right. So the scene itself, Kanye walks in. What was that like?
Well, reports say the atmosphere was pretty charged. He was dressed all in black, took off his sunglasses.
Some people noted his hands were shaking a bit.
Yeah, a slight tremor, apparently. But his voice was described as steady. And his opening line,
Wow. What did he say?
"I'm not here to talk about music. I'm here to talk about murder." Just like that.
Okay. That would definitely get everyone's attention.
Oh, for sure. Audible gasps. The judge calling for silence immediately. Then he explained, why he was there.
Said he was there to talk about Diddy's behavior and his alleged role in what he called the systemic takedown of Michael Jackson.
That phrase, systemic takedown.
Yeah.
And he immediately connected it to his own stuff, didn't he?
Yeah, he did, alluding to, feeling targeted himself, mentioning Harley Pasternak.
His former trainer, right. And the whole forced institutionalization claims.
Exactly. It's like he was framing it from the start, saying, look, I know how this works because it happened to me, or that's how he sees it.
It sets a certain context, definitely. And then he focused on one person in particular.
Fahim Muhammad.
Right. Who is he exactly, and why were Kanye zeroing in on him?
Okay, so Fahim Muhammad is right now Diddy's head of security.
Okay.
But here's the kicker. He was also Michael Jackson's bodyguard
When?
in the months right before Jackson died back in 2009.
Whoa. Okay, yeah, that's a connection.
And that seemed to be West's whole point. Is this just a coincidence, Muhammad being right there with both of them?
He questioned that directly.
Very directly. And he raised questions about Muhammad's qualifications, regarding Michael Jackson, arguably the most famous person on earth.
What kind of questions?
Well, pointing out that when Jackson hired him, Muhammad was apparently a recent college grad. Sacramento State, I think.
With not much high-level security experience before that.
Seemingly not. So how does a recent grad land that job? That's what West was asking.
And he linked Muhammad's hiring back to Diddy.
He referenced testimony from the Conrad Murray trial back in 2011. Apparently, it suggested Muhammad got the Jackson gig through industry connections.
Connections linked to Combs.
Allegedly, yes. That's the link West was drawing.
So West's argument wasn't just about security then.
No, not at all. He claimed Muhammad's role was really about control, access.
Access to what?
Jackson's schedule, his prescriptions, staff, even his fears, his vulnerabilities, that kind of access is key if you're talking about a systemic takedown, right?
It makes sense within that theory.
Oh.
And West added more, didn't he? Something about Wharton.
Yeah. Mentioned Muhammad being a guest speaker there, implying maybe some kind of military intelligence background, something more complex than it looked.
That feels like a bit of a leap, maybe.
It's definitely speculative, yeah. But it fits his narrative of hidden forces. Then he brought up rumors.
What kind of rumors?
Allegations that Muhammad helped clear hard drives, maybe erased security footage from Jackson's house after he died, which, if true, is obviously huge. Obstruction.
And he tied Muhammad to the current Diddy stuff, too. The Little Rod lawsuit.
In that suit, Muhammad is supposedly called an enforcer in this alleged criminal operation, someone who could make problems disappear.
Man, that paints a really dark picture.
It does, and Kanye reportedly finished that part by saying something like, first, Michael Jackson, then me. Who's next?
Chilling. Just chilling. So that leads into his whole idea about handlers, right?
Mhm.
What did he mean by that?
He described them as these like shadowy figures placed around celebrities, not just managers, but people there to control them.
Control how?
Manipulate decisions, keep them quiet if they step out of line or speak against the system.
And he used his own experience as the example again.
Exactly. Harley Pasternak. He brought up that weird Zombieland text message again, the alleged threats about institutionalization if he didn't cooperate.
So Pasternak was his handler, in his view.
That's what he suggested, focused on his public image, his behavior, and then he said Muhammad was like Michael Jackson's version of Pasternak.
But with a key difference.
A huge difference, according to West. Muhammad had access to Jackson's home, his medication. That's way more direct, potentially dangerous control.
So not just managing a career, but managing or maybe controlling the person's actual life, their health even.
That seems to be what West was implying. Gatekeepers for powerful interests with intimate access.
Okay, so a really pervasive kind of control. And he saw a pattern in Michael's life leading up to his death.
Yeah, he laid out this sequence. Michael gets power, right? Acquires the Sony catalog, starts challenging things, speaking out against Tommy Mottola.
Becoming more vocal.
Exactly, protesting. And then suddenly he gets sick, dies. And who's his security head? Muhammad.
And he saw echoes of that in his own life.
He mirrored it directly. So he rose up, challenged Adidas, the Grammys, Balenciaga, Jay-Z, these big entities. And then what happened?
Threats, forced hospitalization.
Right, feeling like, in his words, a modern-day Michael. He drew a really stark parallel between their paths, suggesting the powers that be react similarly when challenged.
It's a powerful comparison, for sure. Very unsettling. Then he went further, didn't he? Naming other artists.
Yeah, he presented this whole list. Artists he believes fought the system and were silenced.
Who's on that list?
Prince, DMX, Whitney Houston, Amy Winehouse, Lisa Left Eye Lopes, and Biggie Smalls.
Wow, quite a list. And he had specific things to say about each.
Briefly, yeah. For Prince, the obvious battle with Warner Brothers over his music, those kind of cryptic final appearances talking about death being watched, then found in the elevator.
And Whitney.
He apparently claimed she told Clive Davis she knew too much about parties, people linked to Diddy's circle, implying her final days weren't just instability, but maybe manufactured discredit before she died.
Left Eye. I remember she made some videos before she died.
Exactly, West mentioned that, saying she felt followed, hunted, right before that car crash in Honduras, questioning the crash itself, the road conditions.
And Biggie.
Just pointing out the obvious, really, it's still unsolved. And Diddy's the one left standing from that inner circle.
And West summed it all up how? With a pretty blunt statement. When you stop being useful to the machine, or you speak out, or you own too much, you become a liability.
He called them coordinated purges. That's incredibly strong language.
It is. It paints a picture of a really ruthless industry, which led him to maybe the most shocking part of the testimony.
The voicemail.
Yeah. The alleged final voicemail from Michael Jackson. West claimed the Jackson family played it for him in confidence.
And what did he say it sounded like?
Terrified, breathing heavily, whispering, like he was afraid of being heard.
And the last line, what was the alleged line?
According to West, Jackson whispered, "Tell them it's Puffy, he knows he's here."
Oh my God, if that's true.
Imagine hearing that in court. Reports said the gallery just froze. Jurors were horrified. Diddy apparently gripped the table.
And West just said,
Michael knew. Just like that must have been incredibly tense.
Unbelievably. So this voicemail, if it exists and says that, is the core of his claim about Diddy's direct involvement, or Jackson's fear of it. Seems like it. And then West went back to the circumstances around Michael's death.
What else did he add?
Mentioned Michael becoming really isolated near the end, kept away from his usual team, surrounded by new people.
People West called.
Industry plants with security badges. Pointing right back at Fahim Muhammad again.
And asking those questions again.
Yeah, like why this young, inexperienced guy? Why did the longtime security vanish? Who put Muhammad there? These questions just hanging in the air.
He also brought up the security cameras, right?
Yeah, the system supposedly malfunctioning the night Michael died, footage wiped. And West drew a line straight from that to the alleged disappearing footage in the Diddy tunnel.
That is a striking parallel to draw.
It really is. Suggests a pattern, right, of potential cover-ups, at least in West's telling. He even theorized maybe Michael wasn't supposed to die from the propofol.
What, like it was an accident within a plan?
Maybe. Or a messed up plan. Or just panic. He floated that idea.
And then he brought up the money.
Oh yeah, the huge financial motives, billions in publishing rights, that massive comeback tour, the value of the catalog itself. You can't ignore that context.
And his conclusion on that point was pretty brutal.
Yeah, reportedly said, Michael's death was the cleanest business move Sony ever made. Just lays it right out there. Implied calculation.
And he didn't stop at Michael Jackson, did he? He broadened it out.
No, he claimed this wasn't just about MJ. It was like a wider pattern in the music industry. Control, silencing, the whole thing.
So Diddy's in the courtroom. Hearing all this, what was his reaction like physically?
Reports said he looked composed on the surface, but showed signs of, stress, clenched jaw, twitching fingers.
Referring to his lawyers.
Furiously, apparently, yeah.
And West actually spoke to him.
Directly. Made eye contact, supposedly, and said, you know what you did to him, you watched the king fall.
Wow. The courtroom must have gone nuts.
Murmurs erupted, yeah. Judge had to restore order again.
And Diddy's response to that direct hit?
Just shook his head, apparently. No verbal denial reported at that moment. Described as looking cornered, maybe blank.
West also talked about meeting Michael Jackson himself.
Yeah, recounted past conversations where MJ apparently expressed fear, being followed, someone inside his home plotting against him.
And West said that description matched
Fahim Mohammed, in his view. Though he clarified Michael didn't name Diddy in those talks, just described this person he feared.
And this part felt different somehow.
Yeah, observers said it felt less like a rant, more like he was genuinely unburdening himself, something he'd held onto.
He stated his own motive pretty clearly, too.
Right. I'm not here to entertain. I'm here because a man died and another man got rich from it. Pointing again at Diddy's alleged financial gains after Michael's death.
Tying it all back to the money and motive.
Exactly. Painting that picture. Michael Jackson, more valuable dead than alive. And someone made sure it happened just so.
Okay, so testimony ends. What happened next? Predictably.
Chaos. A total media firestorm. Every news outlet jumped on it. The allegations were just too explosive.
And the Jackson family, their reaction was significant.
Hugely significant. Jermaine Jackson posted on Instagram basically saying, Kanye said what we couldn't say for 15 years. My brother was murdered.
And LaToya.
Her lawyer put out a statement, reiterating her belief Michael didn't die from an OD and that the family is ready to talk under oath.
That's big. And then old stuff started resurfacing.
Yeah, those leaked AEG emails came back up. The ones suggesting executives knew Michael was unwell before the tour but pushed ahead anyway.
Adds to that picture of pressure and perhaps disregard for his health.
Definitely. And then former Jackson staff members started reportedly offering to testify.
About what?
Unfamiliar security, Michael being paranoid, sleeping with loud music on, details supporting that idea of isolation and fear.
Even law enforcement weighed in.
A retired detective from the original 2009 investigation was quoted, saying these new allegations make it look less like bad medicine and maybe like a setup.
So public opinion started shifting.
It seemed like it. Some still dismissed it as Kanye being Kanye, conspiracy stuff. But a lot more people started taking it seriously, especially with the Jackson family backing it up.
And the trial itself. The atmosphere must have intensified.
Oh, for sure. Reports of increased security, emergency meetings. Diddy's defense tried to downplay Kanye's words, naturally.
But Kanye doubled down.
Yeah, reportedly said something like, they call me crazy, but I'm just telling the truth. And there were whispers, unconfirmed, about prosecutors rethinking witnesses.
Federal investigators may be looking at the MJ files again.
Those were the rumors, yeah. Who knows if anything will come of that.
And Michael's kids, how do they react?
Reports were heartbreaking. Paris apparently privately believes it wasn't an accident. Prince supposedly tweeted something about understanding his dad's fear of the industry, then deleted it quickly.
Man, the whole thing just ballooned.
It really did. It's like the trial suddenly became about much more than just Diddy. It turned into, as one report said, a kind of referendum on the music industry itself.
So let's try to wrap our heads around this. Kanye West's testimony. It's thrown a massive grenade into the Diddy trial.
No kidding. Directly implicating Combs, casting this huge shadow over the whole music business, alleging involvement in Michael Jackson's death.
Based on this narrative of control, handlers, silencing artists.
And specific claims about Fahim Mohammed, that alleged final voicemail. It's a lot.
These are incredibly serious accusations. The fallout could be massive, right?
Yeah.
Not just for the trial, but for how people see the entire industry.
Absolutely. It challenges the whole power structure, raises questions about vulnerability, exploitation.
Which really brings us to the final thought for you, the listener, to chew on. If, and it's a big if, but if Even some of what Kanye claimed has truth to it. What does that really tell us about power and control in entertainment?
Yeah, what are the real consequences when things like this come to light? Is this a reckoning? And, can artists even be protected in that kind of environment?
It definitely leaves you thinking about the patterns, the connections, and all the questions that still don't have answers in this very, very unsettling story.